Make no mistake, the housing crisis is forcing a generation of younger Australians out of the major cities. As the New South Wales Productivity Commissioner said in a recent report, Sydney is becoming the city with no grandchildren, an elegant way of putting it. Younger people, families are fleeing to the regions. They can't get set. The rental market has jumped 40%. The housing market is unattainable for first home buyers in metropolitan areas, except with a lot of help from the family. All of this is a direct result of the policies of successive governments. Their policies from CGT tax breaks for owners flipping their family homes, from the failure to introduce the promised money laundering reforms for 16, 17 years now. That sucks in billions in foreign capital from the likes of China, which competes with local buyers. Negative gearing, again, is an incitement for investors to compete with home buyers, and the failure to control the likes of Airbnb, which allows tax rorts to make it more viable for investors on Airbnb rather than those who would like to find long-term tenancies. There's a range of factors, all eminently fixable, all the fault of successive governments. Combined, and with the failure of governments to deliver adequately on the social housing front, people are being squeezed out of the housing market en masse and renters are being stung hard. These things have created a country of haves or have-nots, and it looks like it will get worse before it gets better. Now, we've been on about the answers to this many, many times, but it's slightly worse than we thought it was. Harry Chemay, who's penned another terrific article for the website using the allegory of the Hunger Games, drawing on that imagery of 200 people turning up for a rental inspection on the weekend, competing against each other to see who'll be the last one standing. Harry says the situation's more dire than was even chronicled by the likes of Alan Kohler in his epic housing essay earlier this year. In that, Kohler recalled how the cost of a house was so much cheaper back in the day when he bought in just a small multiple of the disposable income of the day. It got worse particularly for renters, which make up 30% of the country. Unfortunately, it's the other 70% that control the votes in a greater way, that have more sway than the renters, because 70% of people live in a house that they own or the family owns. And take a look at this chart from Harry. It shows, if you look at the red line, that's the median house price over the years. If you look at the other two, we're talking household disposable income. So the amount of cash that's coming in the door, you need more and more in order to buy a house. But roughly, you used to be able to buy a house on, say, 3 times your disposable income, a bit more. And now we're talking 10 to 15 times. It is out of reach. It is a serious crisis, because after food, what's the next thing we need? A roof over the head. Of course, the exodus from people from the cities is driving up prices in the regions too, in large regional centres. But the renters, how about this for a stat from Harry? Median rents rising in the past 2.5 years by as much as they did in the previous 13 odd years, to now surpass $600 per week. It's worse for women, as their median income is lower than the average man. Comparing apples with apples, the ratios of national median dwelling prices to median incomes are currently 8.3 for males and 9.2 for females. And what of Sydney, with its current median dwelling price of $1.13 million? Well, the ratios sit at 12.2 for males and 13.5 for females, respectively. These are just medians and averages, but they tell one hell of a story. The news for renters has only deteriorated since those January figures. February brought a report from the Australian Housing and Urban Research Institute, AHURI, showing that with home ownership becoming ever more tenuous, a larger proportion of higher income householders are renting for longer. Everybody's being hit by this except for investors. The report highlighted that while households with incomes above $140K in 2021 dollars accounted for only 8% of private renters in 1996, by 2021 they made up 24% of this rental market. With the extra purchasing power and with median rents rising in the past 2.5 years by as much as they did in the past 13 odd years, it's little wonder that high-income renters are squeezing out those with more modest means. It is unfair, it is bad economic policy, less to spend in the general economy, velocity of money, lower economic growth. The Uhuri report confirms, noting the 2021 low rent dwellings with rents of $226 per week or less comprised only 13% of private rental stock compared to 50% in 2001 and 60% in 1996. All of this is because of the policies of successive governments. The policy settings are wrong, and they have been wrong for 20 years. Now with the coalition suggesting that people withdraw on their super to buy a house, are they getting them to pile in at the very top of the market? That will only help the property vendors, the profiteers in the property industry, just drive up prices more. Philosophically, even if it was sort of by mistake, the poor settings have fed the interest of investors over those who actually need a home to live. With our politicians owning several investment properties, often between them, being lobbied continuously by people with several investment properties, things are unlikely to change. The cherished view has been a neoliberal approach to markets, but this has led to policies which have skewed the markets and led to high inequality. Negative gearing is not market, it's a subsidy which transfers wealth from workers to people with more money. Harry's doing a series on this, so get on board and read the series, read the piece on the websites in the description below. It's absolutely essential information. This is a serious crisis now that befolds the government, and who knows where it's going to lead, but it doesn't look like the HAF is going to even solve a fraction of the problem.